QR code, and there are some resources if you're interested in like composition or scales, but I'll go back to it at the end because it's got a lot. There's a great wiki. Honestly, I think the coolest way to start is just by talking about a microtonal system, microtonal, because like in gamelan music, if you're playing in slendro, which is 5 tones, it's not microtonal. They're all the tones you have. There's nothing smaller than slendro. So basically, this chart I think might be the most handiest here in gamelan music. You have an ensemble, and it's all instruments. They're all percussive instruments, and maybe a flute. And they're all very ingrained into a room. They're pretty permanent, and the premise is that pairs of instruments might be tuned to each other. And they're going to use either the slendro scale or the pelog scale, and they're not really scales, they're tuning systems. But they're also scales in that you don't really derive any further combinations of notes out of this pelog. You just say, okay, you're using pelog, their system, their cultural system of music would say that you have certain emphasis on certain notes, just like in 12 divisions of the octave, you have diatonicism, where certain notes generate chords that have certain direction and ought to go to other chords. In pelog, there's a very similar system where certain notes have to have emphasis. It's a social institution as well. And that said, it's not just a physical instrument. Like a tuning system it's sociological. It's ingrained, like an organ takes so long to build. It's going to be in that church for hundreds of years. It becomes a very permanent institution when you create music. So this is 12 tone, equal divisions of the octave. You'll notice that even in these gamelan instruments that are tuned to slendro, there are 5 tones in this tuning system, but they're not even tuned equally to each other. So is there a basis for like acoustically, why are they tuned like that? I don't even think so. But they have a uniqueness, right? Like it's kind of fundamental that they have their own character because they have their own tone widths. Which is why people are often at odds about whether or not D minor is the saddest key. Well, is it? It would be more characteristic if D minor actually had unique intervals inside of it. Gamelan instruments are tuned so that one is a little bit sharper and one is a little bit flatter, and they're in pairs in the ensemble. Gamelan instruments are gorgeous, and people describe them as shimmering because one instrument represents pull and the other push, and it creates a heartbeat effect. It's very cute. That said, we can actually create scales that are acoustically informed. There's the note tone series. It's the series of tones that are present. Oh yeah, that went. It's a series of tones that are present in all sounds, right? In different combinations, and any unique sound, any unique timbre has its own combination of overtones. So that list that just went by, that was like the first 50 overtones or whatever, right? It's an infinite series. It goes on forever, but at a certain point, it exceeds the range of hearing. Acoustics, yeah. It's not a physical difference, it's a mathematical difference, it's a ratio. So when you have a difference in tones, you're actually like, okay, well, this one is vibrating 3 times as fast as the next one, right? Another instrument, and now we can create acoustically informed instruments, and I think it's silly that Pythagoras is credited with the octave because this instrument is like insanely old. It's a stringed instrument from China. You ought not leave your house without it. But you'll notice that these white dots, it kind of looks like a slide guitar. The white dots do not represent notes, they represent overtones on the instrument. So if you lightly press it, and there are like so many different hand techniques to create different timbres out of the instrument. But in general, if you lightly press it, like most stringed instruments, you can create overtones. These mark some of the most fundamental overtones near the lower of the series, and it's been around for ages. It succeeds Greek tetrachords in date, and usually people ascribe modern music theory to start with Greek tetrachords, which is great. The overtone series, this is a chart that my professor made. She's not here. But she made a great chart. Every note in this series is represented as a ratio to the fundamental. Right, so we have an octave, and the most profound discovery that's attributed to Pythagoras is that the octave is the same note, and it has a ratio, it has a number that you can assign to it. So once that started, then you can start ascribing numbers to your music, and then you can create patterns, and then you can create complex systems of tonality. But it continues on in integer multiples of fundamental, and because pitch and frequency don't line up linearly, like this is logarithmic. If you draw this, it looks like a log graph. Very fundamental, because we find in our ear that these at the beginning sound the most constant, right? Arnold Schoenberg writes an excerpt on this, the emancipation of dissonance. As the ear becomes acclimated to a sonority within a particular context, think a major third in your favorite sonata or what have you, the sonority will gradually become emancipated from that context and seek a new one. The emancipation of the dominant quality dissonances has followed this pattern. I'm thinking of like a flat 7 in jazz music. That's pretty unheard of for ancient music as being a consonance, but that's a typical consonance. And there's a chart that I found on Wikipedia. And I always raise a red flag when I see the word primitive in most art. I don't think it's primitive that the octave exists as a consonance. I think it makes sense that if people are getting used to this system of ratios and tonality, that the octave is a pretty insane development. The octave is at that point it's revolutionary. I don't think it's primitive, but in comparison, it doesn't look like it's much because. And do note that actually. So for following the overtone series, this is A at 110 hertz, 110 cycles a second. We have an octave, we have a fifth, and then we have another octave, right? So this is also A. This comes in between, where they say ancient Greek and Middle Ages on this chart. So when the fifth is considered a consonance, so too is the interval between the fifth and the next octave up, right? So a fourth. They're kind of complements, but it's not represented on this chart. Fourths, definitely a dissonance in Gregorian chant. I wrote a Gregorian chant for some of the songs. But yeah, no, like at this point, Messiaen is doing all these crazy extended chords in his organ solos. This emancipation of the overtone series doesn't really correspond with the overtone series that we have, because this corresponds with the 12-tone system, right? So yeah, you can put your flat 7 in music, and maybe it's the Renaissance period when it was flat 7, the dominant 7, sure. But it's still technically out of tune with the overtone series. It's just an artifact of the instrument, right? So this emancipation is working in parallel with the instruments that are being developed at the time, right? If someone was actually trying to make an acoustically informed, which is by all means isn't a true rule or more pure, then they might not have used a 12-tone system. But because it exists, the 12-tone system, sociologically, and also to most people's ears, is more consonant than any of these intervals in the overtone series. So they might sound more pure. They might beat perfectly. You might not hear anything out of tune, but still, perhaps to you and other people around, consider the dissonance because you're not familiar with the music. It's just the way the ear works, right? Pythagoras like fifths, but the problem with fifths is that if you stack them enough, you don't actually get an octave. And the difference between your octave way up there and your actual fundamental is called a comma. It's a very, very small, it's like 20, it's like a quarter tone. It's almost 25 cents. So if we want to make a tuning system with Pythagoras, like we're going to start at C and we're going to go up in fifths, G, D, A, E, B, F sharp, C sharp. I got this. I might need help though. C sharp to G sharp, and then G sharp to D sharp. I'm getting confused because you go to A sharp, and when you're at A sharp, and then you're going to you go to E sharp, and then you go to B sharp, right? Which is like we're just adding sharps. And we have to do this. We can't actually use enharmonicism at this point because this doesn't line up with the next octave up, right? You're not gonna get the same note. If you go up far enough to actually get another C, it's gonna be tuned differently. You have to call it a different name. So Pythagoras' little spiral looks like this, but the remedy is to take that difference and split it up and put it around, and you can create scale. You can create a mean tone temperament by taking this, and chopping it up. Right? So, and Pythagoras for discovering the author. This is a mean tone organ. No, this is a harpsichord. But notice that it actually has like extra keys on it, right? It has 3 extra thirds. So the harmonic premise is that, yeah, you're going to split up that comma, that difference, so that all your octaves line up, and you're going to put it around the instrument. But, you're not really going to get a real good major third if you start on A and you try and go to D flat. That's going to sound bad. It's not going to be in tune. Because at that point, you're trying to make a major third from A, and then this spiral keeps going around on the inside, and it's not going to sound great. So to really tune that, you're going to extend the spiral in one direction just by 3 notes. You only need 3 notes. And if you look at the instrument, yeah, that's a G sharp, it's an A sharp, and there's a D sharp. In addition to an E flat, a B flat, and an A flat. So those three accidental keys have extra buttons on them. So you gotta hit the right one if you want to get your pure thirds. No, it's not that old of an instrument, I suppose. Like, don't be mistaken. Hello. Don't be mistaken. Haydn was writing his piano sonatas in mean tone temperament. Right? Like, I played one of those for my freshman year jury, and it's horrible. But it was on the piano. Is that historically accurate? Which seems to be something that they care about. I would think that they would have us play it on a tuned harpsichord, right? And in between every movement, until he developed a well temperament, Bach too would stop, like, okay, next one's an E minor. I'll reach in there and let's retune that C, just like it just needs to be a little bit flatter so that A flat, C, E flat triad is really in tune. Okay, now let's start the piece. It took like 10 minutes or 5 minutes, whatever. Start the piece. Bach developed the well temperament. And that was revolutionary because you didn't have to retune the keyboard every time, but you made sacrifices in terms of tuning. Oh yeah. So this is interesting because if each key is actually more, has more of an identity, so to speak, in terms of its relative triads and certain intervals, because each note is not equally tempered, you can take advantage of that. So this is John Brombo. He made a lot of organs. He made this organ that this piece is played on, and I thought it was cute to add a silly picture of him. I'll play the beginning and I'll play the end of it. This is an organ that's in quarter common mean tone. It's pretty diatonic. Tonic, minor. You might notice that doesn't sound like really tempered, especially those half steps. do you do with those thirds that aren't, you know, they don't have a compensation, but some of those thirds are going to be on the tune. Michelangelo Rossi is making use of the fact that this instrument is not in tune equally, or at least making use of the fact that it's in tune uniquely. It's mean tone tuning. So at the end, you can imagine that some of those half steps and some of those thirds sounded a little whack. Probably not the ones that are designed to be more in tune, like that D sharp with an A, probably, or that C sharp with an A. Probably some different notes happening in there. Notes that are not necessarily antithetical to the instrument, but like make use of the fact that the instrument is tuned uniquely to create a very unique dissonance in the piece. When this piece is, and a lot of pieces like this, like if you're gonna recreate this piece, like are you gonna be true to historical accuracy when tuning an organ? Not a question I care about, but a lot of people care about. What next? Yeah, organs be known. Aha! And now, this will only be a little bit of math, but I think it's fun math because when we limit ourselves to a certain portion of the overtone series, we can make a skip. It's not that bad. If we're gonna take, so we have, firstly, our fundamental that's a C there, and then we have an octave, and then we have a fifth, and then we have a fourth to another C, and then we have a major third. Those are our intervals, and by combining them in different ways, you can create a diatonic heptatonic scale. Not diatonic, the heptatonic, meaning seven tones. The chart's here, but like to derive these, how do you get a D? There's no D in this overtone series. What do you do? You stack your C plus a G plus your D, and then you lower it by an octave, right? And what that means is you're going to take the ratio of the fifth, and you're going to multiply it to itself to get a D up there, right? So because we know that the fundamental times 3 is a fifth. We're going to get the D, right? And then if an octave is twice the frequency, what's the operation for lowering one octave? We cut the frequency in half. Oh yeah. I got that. Oh yeah. Alright. So this is our fifth. This is G. And if we want a D above that, we're gonna add another fifth. Great. Did I do something wrong? No, not really. And this is why. 9 to 4, but this one says 9 to 8. Why is that? Why is that technically correct? We've limited ourselves to 5 overtones. We're not even at the 8th overtone. But hey, what does it matter that you know? That's why, because if we just stack 2 fifths, we're actually still an octave above, right? We need to reduce by another octave, and to reduce by another octave, we need to multiply by another half. Octave reduction, right? Mm-hmm. So if you see any multiples of 2 in the denominator of any of these ratios, it's an octave. If you see any multiples of 3 in the numerator or in the denominator, that's referring to the third harmonic. So we can look down the scale and 5 to 4. What's 5 to 4? Well, 5 is the major third, and 4 is the octave right there. Major 5 to 4 is major third. 15 to 8 is, in terms of least multiples, it's 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, right? 3 to 5th over the octave that's nearest to it. All right. So we're almost halfway through. We can throw some shade. And this is not shade. These are just comments that, like, music theorists have had for ages. Yeah, equal temperament, 12 divisions of the octave existed, like, in the time of Ptolemy and Zarlino, who was an Italian Renaissance theorist. Like, that's like 15th century. They didn't even touch it. They didn't even touch it. And here's why. Stuart thinks that just intonation is like a pure child that lives inside of every equal-tempered adult. I think that's strange, but I don't really know what it means. Lloyd says, 12 divisions of the octave is an acoustical compromise, tolerated by many ears on the piano, and designed to satisfy as completely as possible 3 incompatible requirements. True intonation, tuning is according to the Overtune series, and then complete freedom of modulation, because, as discovered, you can't play in certain keys because they're out of tune. And then convenience and practical use, and that's pretty important because you can't really be like truly ingenuitive without, unless you can like hear all the pitches in your head. An instrument is very important in creating music, and most composers specifically require that they are fully informed on the instrument they're writing for. It sacrifices the first of these to the second and third. So we don't have true intonation in 12 tone, but hey, we can play in whatever key we want. And if you know how to do it, you can modulate in whatever key you want. Kuttner says, 12 divisions of the octave cannot be considered correct without major qualifications. Kernberger says, without such expressive resources, the uniqueness of the intervals present in a given key on a tempered instrument, music would be nothing more than a harmonious noise that tickles the ear but leaves the heart slumbering away in a disgusting indifference. That's some much slander. Zarlino, the Renaissance theorist with contributions to temperament, says, well, he didn't actually think it was worth mentioning. He didn't even say anything about it. But he knew it existed, surely. Yeah, in the 1600s, like 4 different people, 5 different people around the world, they're like, I found it. It's equal temperament. And they're like, we already knew about that. It sounds like trash. We don't want to use it. But after well temperament, they kind of relieve the stress of having to modulate while you're playing 42 preludes and inventions by Bach, right? Like, it becomes helpful when your instrument becomes so institutionalized, like a piano, which is in every room. It has to be tuned the same, because you're going to bring your music to a piano and you're going to try and play a piece how you wrote it. And it happens. So if we limit ourselves to the first 7 overtones, we can get some crazy stuff. This guy is, I think he's lost it. This was in 2003. He developed this color notation. The color notation is fine. It's really cool, actually. So these are all flavors of thirds. And it is color notation, sorry.
Colorblind.
But like, G3 corresponds to 6/5. That's a specific type of major third. That's a ratio. This Y3, that's up there at the top. That's 5/4. That's a major third. These all just represent different ways of actually describing your just tuning. This is 7 limit. Even with the first 7 overtones, technically, this chart is infinite. This is an infinite series. You can create infinite combinations of the first 7 overtones. I'll play the beginning of it, but like, he's kind of silly. Here's a chord chart, if that makes any sense. He's got some wonders in his head, right? Despite the, like, he developed this notation, and he recorded this, and, you can download all the MIDI tracks online if you want to recreate it. But you notice that he has a tuning in each one, so he has tuning 3, okay, 3 limit, I think is what that means, because further down he does have 7 and then 8. But you do call these chords, like this is a zo, B flat, S, like this. When you're describing an interval, you just say so, yo, zoo. Like, it's pretty cool. I don't know how to understand it yet, but it is very, very helpful when trying to describe the infinite possibility of just tunings that you can have. A lot of people on the internet community use this color notation to describe intervals that they've created. It helps. But because an instrument is an institution, you need to settle down a little bit when you're trying to build an instrument or trying to create at least accessibility. I think is something that instruments tend to approach, because those were all synthesized instruments, right? And he was singing that, and that was MIDI, and you can't recreate that unless you know exactly what kind of tuning he was using each time and how he was making that. So you can divide the octave equally. Brilliant. The 12th tone EDO on the left. EDO stands for equal divisions of the octave. Highlighted in yellow, it's a big old oval. But the way this chart is read is that, so if we have at the key at the top, 3, 2 is a ratio, that's an interval, that's the 5th. It's the red circle. Okay, so we got this circle here, yeah? And it's like 2 cents flat. Brilliant, that sounds about right. The 5th in 12 tone temper is 2 cents sharp, or 2 cents flat. And then also 7/4 is the dominant is a harmonic 7. So this rhombus up there, that one, it's really out of tune. It's like 30 cents sharp. It's so sharp that technically on a piano keyboard we call it a dominant 7, not a harmonic 7. And as you divide the octave into different divisions, different subdivisions of equally spaced notes, the tuning of each of these, your accuracy to an actual just, the overtone series, it changes. Especially when you try and divide the octave into 11 notes. Like nothing is in tune except for 11 to 8. I don't even know what that note is. But you can keep trying to divide the octave into different numbers of equally spaced pitches, and perhaps you may approximate just intonation. And you may not. When you get to 27 divisions of the octave, that 5th is like 10 cents sharp. But hey, it's still usable because that 13/8, but also the 7/4, which is the harmonic 7, is more in tune. So that's perhaps more useful if you want to use minor thirds or harmonic 7s in your music. They're just different consonances appear in different divisions of the octave. Harry Partch really liked making instruments in 43 divisions of the octave. A lot of them are percussion instruments. There's like a garage museum somewhere, I forget what it is, but like he's got all these instruments, and he was like 19th century, so he's dead, but it still exists and you can go see the instruments. It becomes increasingly unpractical to divide the octave into like 200 notes. That doesn't make sense. And also you can only perceive as like between 2 to 8 hertz difference in tone, right? So like it becomes exceedingly unpractical when you can't even discriminate between 2 different notes on a keyboard. Dave is having a stroke because Dave has picked up a lumitone and he's been hired to create an increasingly complex series of tutorials on this instrument, which is an isomorphic keyboard. It has like 250 keys on it, and they're all laid out in a hexagon. But in this tutorial, after he explains the tuning of 22 divisions of the octave, I feel like he has something that's worth hearing.
Around any tune. But if all this up-down notation and mean tone versus non-mean tone tuning is confusing you, that is 1000% okay. A huge part of what makes the lumitone such a game changer is that you really don't need to know any of this stuff. As I've said numerous times before, I am not a microtonalist. I'm just some guy who loves music and all its possibilities. And for the first time, I have an instrument that will allow me to access all these microtonal tunings in a way where I can just follow my ear, my gut.
Accessibility.
We all interface and learn music in different ways. You know, if I were to learn this stuff just straight from a book, I'd probably have a stroke. And of course, while having a proper understanding of all the theory and knowing how to work out what your enharmonic equivalents are is a massive leg up. You can also just play. Lumitone is designed to let your intuition take over. Hit a bum note when you're trying to build a chord, pull that shit back a comma, see how it feels. Follow the color patterns and do what works for you.
He plays something. And as David, he's really funny actually. His videos are pretty silly. He talked about something really important, that like accessibility is probably the most important thing when talking about any sort of art at all. Like if you physically cannot access the creation of those tones, you never will. We have software now, and that's how I developed some of my music that I'll share. I use Logic and a special synthesizer. But like this keyboard is crazy because with technology, you can put any tuning you want. You can do historical recreations. You can use it for 12 tone. I don't know why you would, but you can't do it. And it looks kind of silly because it's isomorphic, but like that gives you access to all of the notes in 5 octaves that on this keyboard or on this keyboard in 27 divisions of the octave, because there's only, you know, 1 note per note here, I only get like 2 octaves. It's not very handy for actually creating any music, and if there's no, this pattern, it's not a pattern that corresponds to the tuning system, it's not usable. Unless you look, oh yeah, fifth, it corresponds to this. This is laying out to accommodate the tuning system. This is laying out to accommodate whatever tuning system you want, because you can change the colors of the buttons, which is super handy. You can create any little cool bit you want. I really like this.
Around any tuning. But if all this up did...
Yeah, go away. 24 EDO is maybe a more accessible microtonal tuning because you can tune another keyboard down like a quarter step. Charles Ives did that, and it's written like it's written for 2 keyboards, but really he's saying you ought to tune one of these keyboards quarter flat, and then one performer will play on 2 keyboards this piece, where the top line represents one keyboard and the bottom line represents another. And this is accessible because you don't have to know how to read another notation system to do this, right? Yeah. To the ear though, if you're playing that quarter flat, I don't know about y'all, but I can discriminate between a quarter flat. And if I'm reading like, oh yeah, D sharp, and it's not a D sharp, that messes me up. Messes me up when I'm playing the keyboard and it's like, you know, tuned down 5th or whatever, right? Some people experience that. I would hate this. Audible, but like, look how you have to replicate this. You have to jump to the other keyboard with one hand. Maybe the left hand is what that indicates. But I would suppose this indicates that this melodic line increases. So your musical consistency has to jump between 2 different instruments, which is kind of wacky. The Lumitone lets you do that. We don't have to watch Dave's tutorial, but you can do it on Lumitone. Dave specifically talks about using it for like Turkish music, which you can, because Turkish music and Arabic music, they have modes that use 24 divisions of the octave, and they have a lot of modes. they have a whole ton of modes, and you know, when you have 24 divisions of the octave, immediately, like, okay, you don't have to have heptatonic scales. You can have scales with more than 7 tones in them. You can have modes with more than 7 tones in them. Look up a chart of Arabic modes. They're racking. It's like a huge circle. It's great. We can continue to divide the octave into increasingly irrational or rational divisions of the octave. A lot of people like this one. This is 31 divisions of the octave. People meaning mostly probably people in the Lumatone community, but also like this person has notated it in Dorico, which is a notation software. Dorico, I think, is the only software that allows you to create crazy key signatures. I wasn't able to replicate it in Musical. I'll show y'all. Yeah, 31 tone hits a lot of the intervals in the harmonic series, approximates them very well, except for the fifth, which is sharp by like 5 cents. It's kind of silly. This is what this person has to say. This is Diana Rose, and her music is great. You can find it on YouTube, but it's not on Spotify. They're just trying to explain this theory. It's a very brief YouTube video, and notice they have these accidentals that are all unique to the theory of 31 divisions of the octave. That's not going to be present in maybe another different division of the octave, but let's listen to it, and if you see the words flying by, that's okay, because it is a very brief YouTube. Well, that's something else, is that notation has to be accessible. Like, if this system of notation, you know, you can't print that out on your little printing press in the 1600s, right? You got like, how many sharps are in there? I don't know. There was no key signatures noted. Those are just all accidentals. But Dorico is capable of doing that. I've not yet used it, and I will soon. Because, again, when I compose music, I'm usually just using my computer, and I'm probably not at a keyboard, which is controversial, but I do it. And like that might make my life easier because now it's more accessible. You can put a key signature in there, all the accidentals are in there, you just go boop, boop, boop. Oh yeah, I want 3 tones higher. Okay, yeah, you don't have to do the math. But also notice that in this video, there are some, and also there, a lot of numbers pop up with commas. Those are all ratios. Those are all intervals in the overtone series. And they're approximated really well in 31 divisions of the octave. So she's displaying the approximations where they occur in her music. And she's saying, oh yeah, this is kind of like this chord in just intonation. But it's 31 divisions of the octave, so they're going to be a little out of tune. But like, she's trying to do her best to represent the just tuning, which is an incredible feat. It's crazy. Let's see what else we have. 10, 15 minutes? Okay. Oh, Mike Battaglia. Mike Battaglia made that playlist. He also works with Lumatone in making some videos. So here is a chart, and this chart is split up in 3 different parts because it's so big and it's just a tall line. But this represents the approximations present in 31 divisions of the octave, 31 EDO. So on the left we see 1 tone, 0 to 31, as opposed to 1 to 31, is like almost 40 cents, 38.7 cents. And if you increase in that very, very equal tone width going up for 31 notes. This is an interval in the harmonic series. That's tuned very well. I don't know which one that is, but what is that? Four to three? Is that a fifth? That's a fifth. No? Where's the fifth? We have a fifth in here? I don't see a fifth. We have a major third. That's strikingly in tune. And you can see all the deviations. This exists for 12th division of the octave, but you wouldn't think of it because, for example, the super major fourth exists in between the perfect fourth and the tripental. You'll never be able to access it because it's exactly 50 cents in between each one of those. And you'll never hear it. And you wouldn't recognize it either. But technically, if you wanted to create music and approximate your just intonation with a 12-tone keyboard, you would have to use one of those notes. And that exists for all equal divisions of the octave. You can never be exact when you build an instrument. But if you're crazy, like that guy we saw earlier, you can just write all your music in just intonation and solve all your problems, which is extremely tedious, but phenomenal. You're playing House of Rising Sun, and it's worth listening to. In addition, if you divide the octave into more than 12 notes, you can approximate to 12 tones. You don't even have to use all these new intervals that you found. You can approximate to something that is familiar to people's ears, like Mike is doing here. That's definitely in like A minor or something, right? And that's definitely like, you know, some pretty normal resolutions that I would expect to hear. But further on, and you can go and listen to it because it's really cool. I want to show you some. He definitely does explore the potential of the tuning, or at least the affordance of the tuning. This one is just, Cale is moving his hand around in a way that indicates that shape is still important on this instrument. This is 43 division of the octave, but like a major chord looks the same as it does somewhere else on the instrument. Even more so than on a keyboard, because all of these are just flat hexagons as opposed to having raised, sharps and flats. Your A major chord doesn't look like a major chord if it's in a key that, like F, that doesn't actually have an accidental in it. But on this instrument, it would look identical, just translated. Okay? That's another unique quality about this isomorphic instrument that I think is really cool. But we're not going to listen to it because I'm going to show you some of my crazy music in 27 EDO. This is Brandon Byron's, and this is 27 Yeah, so his guitar is, he sent it off to a group of people who refretted it to 27 positions of the octave. It's pretty cool because he's rocking it. Yeah, so in 27 tone, your fifth is sharp by like 10 cents. That doesn't sound practical immediately because the fifth is a very fundamental overtone. It's like a pretty important consonance. The same major third as 12 tone, so some familiarity perhaps. But like you get a really good harmonic seventh, which is just flatter than a dominant seven on a keyboard. Your minor thirds are tuned more accurately, I think. Besides that, I made this chart about, and I made this for new musical styles and ideas because, like, accessibility and familiarity kind of go hand in hand, especially when your ear is learning to listen to new things. I made this in Google Sheets and I kind of love it. So 12 divisions of the octave is over here, and 27 divisions of the octave is over here. These ones highlighted in a light blue refer to the fact that their just approximations are kind of the same. Like we have this 5/4 major third in 12th tone that's also present in 27 divisions of the octave. Notice that everything in the middle is all just intonation, thus everything is a ratio. We don't measure in cents if we're tuning according to the harmonic series. But while, while this fifth is like crazy flat, crazy sharp by 10 cents, and the fourth is also flat by almost 10 cents. So, and that makes sense because the fifth and the fourth are related in the harmonic series. Dave named these, and I like Dave's names because then you can create a structure for creating more music. My favorite interval so far is the harmonic seventh. Note here it's really in tune. It's only off at like 3 cents. But you get some cool interval names like the subminor third and also the super major sixth. What are those? The augmented fourth and then the tritones, because there are 2 of them now. When you buy the octave like this. I'm gonna play an excerpt that I made. This is a synthesized organ instrument with some portamento, just so that you can really hear the difference between these notes. And sometimes they increment in half steps, and it's really interesting. It's all 27 divisions of the octave. Yeah, B triple flat major has the notes B flat in the bass, B flat, and then D flat and F double flat. And immediately, I don't think it's very intuitive, so I might try and make another system because I would like, maybe that's just it, because a major chord, it has a different properties in this division of the octave. Like, how do you name your accidentals? That's a part of developing a tuning system and your harmonics and notation. For the purposes of accessibility, pretty important. No key signature. This is actually the system on the wiki, on the Zen Harmonic wiki. So it's not my system, and I don't like it. I'll play it. I noticed an error here, so technically So I'm trying to recreate, this is a circle of fifths that exists in 27 divisions of the octave, and when you do that, you're going to go 27 times around in fifths until you get to your starting pitch, right? I see an error. Well, I have the third pitch class in 27 divisions of the octave is a D flat, but also I have a D flat here and it's labeled as number 2. So I don't know what's going on. One of those is notated incorrectly. And that makes sense because this notation definitely not related to the project and logic at all. Like I just like listening to project and logic. It's like, okay, let's notate it. Kind of a pain in the butt, but like, notice that in 27 divisions of the octave, there's a triple sharp here, triple sharp F, there's a triple flat, a B flat. It just doesn't feel intuitive to me, so I'm gonna keep messing with that. I wrote this as an old American harp song, and then I just want to talk a little bit after showing it. But this is Erie, this is vocoder instruments, and I'm trying to replicate the maybe it's like trying to approximate 12 tone with 27 tone, but like as you might hear, there are many ways to create a minor third, and some of them sound scary as heck. So like at that bit there, like you can hear like an approach to a minor third suddenly is has so much more tension. You can really get in there and like, oh, close the gap. Oh, close the gap. Oh, you're not there yet. Because there's another division of the octave. Oh, okay, and now you're at a mid third, and now you're at a minor third. Oh, now you're at your sub minor third, and it's like it's crazy amount of tension that you can build. The QR code. This has a few resources on it. There is a website. Here. Let's go here. Let's go to this website. This is what it's saying. Yay, we're in the 21st century, so now we can subvert centuries of useful institutionalism at the palm of our hands. This is a skill building website, and you can come in here and like mess around with your little mean tone temperament, the equal divisions of the octave, just tuning, whatever you want, you just go. So we have a pitch here. Don't know what name it is, don't know what it is, but its equivalents are noted. So this is the same one over here. Yeah. We have one axis here. We have another one up here. But we can also go this way. Well, diatonicism just got bigger, right? Like that's do re mi, but this is that's also kind of a do re mi, right? So you can create different flavors of your favorite heptatonic scales. With most divisions of the octave greater than 12, this is 27 divisions of the octave. This is that link is minus set 2. But you can just go in here and wreck shit up. Wanna rank 2 temperament? Like there's so many very complex scales that you can create that I am not knowledgeable of, just because like they involve a deeper understanding of just intonation. But if you want to create an equal temperament, the easy way to do it is just go in here and say 5 divisions of the octave. And then when you go to your keyboard, oh, horrible. An octave and 5 notes. And your scales don't have to have octaves. Pythagoras didn't have an octave of it. But really hard to create music without an instrument. And I think that it's an era in time, thanks to technological development, and also like sociological development, that like we can actually start to understand these things because we have access to them. Like computer technology is crazy. I made all of my Microtonal music, and I'm also producing a lot of music in Logic anyway. I do recommend this synthesizer called the Surge synthesizer. It's a free instrument. You download your tuning file online. You download your tuning file from this website, and then you go into Logic. I can play some of these on my keyboard too. Aha, 27 ETO. But like. This is a Slendro scale. This is that's a gamelan. There's another gamelan. We have the intense diatonic scale. That was the 5-limit scale that we looked at, and that one, you know, it doesn't sound unfamiliar because honestly, it sounds maybe the most familiar, which is interesting because like. That scale that we developed with 5-limit is not the scale that's represented in 12-tone instrumentalism, but when we hear it in our heads, maybe its most tuned version is actually this most tuned, it's called an intense diatonic scale. I would actually argue that our perceptions of music are mostly based on, or our conceived notions of music are likely mostly based on our perceptions of music. For example, if you're hearing a song in your head and you've never actually heard a justly tuned diatonic scale, you might be accurately representing it. Choirs are often trained to tune to that, but like, just by listening to pop music, you might not know that, or even hear the difference. It's so subtle. This one especially. Here's a normal keyboard. Again, these don't match up to this instrument. This instrument is not designed to play those things, but it's what we have access to, so we have to use it sometimes. Until I can afford one of those cool little isomorphic ones. You know. Might be a couple years of teaching, but it'll happen. I'll have one, and I'll be so happy. Thanks for coming, guys. Thanks for coming and listening. Thank you so much. I think it's crazy that technically, you know, the technological skills to develop other tuning systems existed. And it's not really about that. It's mostly colonialism, right? Like, gamelan might be the most common non-12-tone ensemble. There's a gamelan ensemble here, the closet's like down the hallway. There's a gamelan ensemble in Ireland where I studied. And even studying Irish traditional music, like it's so apparent that like when George Petrie came in the 1800s to study Irish music, he was like, wow, that all sounds really good. They're keening. A keen is a song that you sing to a child or a cow or whatever, or maybe a work song. Same thing, whatever. Like, you know, George Petrie came over and he was like, oh yeah, wow, look at all this traditional music. I'm going to notate it in Western notation, and I'm going to go back to the Great Britain, and I'm going to publish a book called The Ancient Music of Ireland, which further implies that this music is somehow primitive, red flag. Starts to imply those values into Irish music, which then perturbs the natural traditional formation of Irish music in like the most remote places of Ireland where they don't give a damn shit about what kind of classical accordion music you're playing. No offense to accordionists. But like, you know, when you're so remote, you do have a less tempered musical formation. It happens. It's bad because we like to listen to traditional musics, but they become superseded. It's just so pervasive. If you can't play it on a keyboard, then oh, I have to tell you guys this. So I was in my jury, right, and I got this book on like acoustics, the acoustical foundations of music, and I'm like, this is Heinholz, he's a theorist. And I have this book, I'm like, yeah, jury, you like showing you my music. Oh, this book? Oh, the professor is leaving and put the book in the tie lounge. I forget the name of the professor. It's like, oh, they're going to Notre Dame? And Dr. Carter Pan says, yeah, that's like probably a banned book if you're studying in Notre Dame, which is like an extremely classical conservatory. It's like, this isn't a book on acoustics. Like, okay. Firstly, he's implying that Western music is not acoustically informed, which is fine. A lot of music isn't. But like, this professor is going to study at this conservatory, and like, there's a lot of chicken scratch in here that's definitely incorrect math. So like, they don't need this book anyway.
Take the book.
It's my book now. You can create acoustically informed music. You can create accessible music, but it is historical truth that accessible music eventually turned into musical imperialism. It's crazy to explore these things, and it's awesome that you can do it on the internet. And it sucks that you can't really do it on this, but it's okay. It's fine, but I'm not a big fan. Thanks for coming.